Welcome back to the Talking ETV Book Club. My name is Mashawn. If you are new here, this is a podcast. It's linked in the description. It's on Apple. It's on Spotify. Pretty sure it's on Google. And here on YouTube. And I started this book club after watching all of the Harry Potter movies. I started the book club with officially the Walking Dead comic books. I read all four of these compendiums live on YouTube. If you want to see us kiki, hee hee, and ha ha, these are playlists on my YouTube. I got a playlist for compendium one. Each compendium got their own playlist on YouTube. So that's really the birth of the podcast. But like officially doing it as a podcast for the book club is Harry Potter. After watching all the Harry Potter movies, I'm like, this is some of the most famous material in the fucking world. So I got to read the source material, right? So far, we already read the first book, which is the Sorcerer's Philosopher's Stone, whatever you want to call it. Like that more than the first movie. We on the Chamber of Secrets. And so far, I do like this more than the second movie. I ain't gonna even hold y'all. Y'all gonna make me one of them people where I'm into the books more than the movies. And I don't really know where I'm gonna go next with the book club. Yes, I do have all the Game of Thrones books, but I'm not reading them until George make them last two books. We need George to stay alive and finish that, okay? So yeah, I'm not doing Game of Thrones next, even though I have the books. I'm trying to see what I want to start next. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I'll see. We'll figure it out. But today we are on chapter 12. Chapter 12 is titled The Polyjuice Potion. I don't know where we're going with this, but let's get into it. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Chapter 12, The Polyjuice Potion. They stepped off the stone staircase at the top, and Professor McGonagall rapped on the door. The open the It opened slightly and they entered. Also, if you new here, this ain't no straight read through. I gotta tell y'all this every episode because you know it's always gonna be somebody seeing this for the first time. This ain't no we just reading straight through. We kikiing, we googling shit. Cause I'm not from the United Kingdom and I don't know what the fuck they be talking about sometimes. So no, I be googling shit. We laughing, we talking shit like it's a book club. Okay, this ain't no read through. You want to read through? Go bad on Audible, the audiobook. Okay. They stepped off the stone staircase at the top, and Professor McGonagall rapped on the door. It opened silently, and they entered. Professor McGonagall told Harry to wait and left him there alone. Harry looked around. One thing was certain. All of the teachers' offices had Harry visited so far this year. Dumbledore's was by far the most interesting. If he hadn't been scared out of his wits that he was about to be thrown out of school, he would have been very pleased to have the chance to look around it. It was a large and beautiful circular room, full of funny little noises. A number of curious silver instruments stood on spindle leg tables, whirring and emitting little puffs of smoke. The walls were covered with portraits of old headmasters and headmistresses, of all whom were snoozing gently in their frames. There was also an enormous claw-footed desk, and sitting on set on the shelf behind it, a shabby, tattered wizard's hat, the sorting hat. Harry hesitated. He cast a wary eye around the sleeping witches and wizards on the walls. Surely it couldn't hurt if he took the hat down on and tried again. Just to see. Just to make sure it had put him in the right house. He walked quietly around the desk, lifted the hat from its shelf, and lowered it slowly onto his head. It was much too large and slipped down over his eyes. He had just had it done, just as he had done it the last time he put it on. Harry stared at the black inside of the hat, waiting. Then a small voice in his ear. "Be in your bonnet, Harry Potter?" Yes, Harry muttered. Sorry to bother you. I wanted to ask. You've been wondering whether I put you in the right house," said the hat smartly. "Yes, you are particularly difficult to place, but I stand by what I said before." Harry's heart leapt. "You would have done well in Slytherin." Harry's stomach plummeted. He grabbed the point of the hat and pulled it off. It hung limply on his hand, grubby and faded. Harry pushed it back onto his shelf, feeling sick. "You're wrong," he said aloud to the still and silent hat. It didn't move. Harry backed away, watching it. Then a strange gagging noise behind him made like Harry, you know they see you while you in here playing, touching stuff. Then a strange gagging noise behind him made him wheel around. He wasn't alone after all. Standing on a golden perch behind the door was a decrepit-looking bird that resembled a half-plucked turkey. Oh my God, the motherfucking phoenix! Okay. Harry stared at it, and the bird looked balefully back. I've never seen that word. Making its gagging noise again. Harry thought it looked very ill. Its eyes were dull, and even as Harry watched, a couple more feathers fell out of its tail. Harry was just thinking that all he needed was for Dumbledore's pet bird to die while he was alone in the office with it, when the bird burst into flames. Harry yelled in shock and backed away into the desk. He looked feverishly around in case there was a glass of water somewhere, but couldn't see one. The bird, meanwhile, had become a fireball. It gave one loud shriek, and next second there was nothing but a smoldering pile of ash on the floor. The office door opened. Dumbledore came in, looking very somber. "Professor," Harry gasped, "your bird. I couldn't do anything. He just caught fire." To Harry's astonishment, Dumbledore smiled. "About time, too," he said. "He's been looking dreadful for days. I've been telling him to get a move on." Harry chuckled at the stun. He chuckled at the stunned look on Harry's face. "Fox is a phoenix, Harry. Phoenixes burst into flame when it's time for them to die and are reborn from the ashes. Watch him." Harry looked down in time to see a tiny, wrinkled, newborn bird poke its head out of the ashes. It was quite as ugly as the old one. "It's a shame you had to see him on a burning day," said Dumbledore, seating himself behind his desk. "He's really very handsome most of the time. Wonderful red and gold plumage. Fascinating features, phoenixes. They can carry immensely heavy loads. Their tears have healing powers, and they make highly faithful pets." In the shock of Fox catching fire, Harry had forgotten what he was there for, but it all came back to him as Dumbledore settled himself in the high chair behind the desk and fixed Harry with his penetrating light blue stare. Before Dumbledore could speak another word, however, the door of the office flew open with an almighty bang and Hagrid burst in, a wild look in his eyes. His baklava perched on top of his shaggy black head and the dead rooster still swinging from his hand. "It wasn't Harry, Professor Dumbledore," said Hagrid urgently. "I was talking to him for seconds before that kid was found. He never had time, sir." Dumbledore tried to say something, but Hagrid went ranting on, waving the rooster around in his agitation, sending feathers everywhere. "It couldn't have been him. I swear it in front of me old Ministry of Magic if I have to." "Hagrid, You've got the wrong boy, sir. I know Harry never—" "Hagrid," said Dumbledore loudly. "I do not think that Harry attacked those people." "Oh," said Hagrid, the rooster falling limply at his side. "Right. I'll wait outside then, headmaster." And he stomped out looking embarrassed. "You don't think it was me, Professor?" Harry repeated hopefully as Dumbledore brushed rooster feathers off of his desk. "No, Harry, I don't," said Dumbledore, though his face was somber again. "But I still want to talk to you." Harry waited nervously while Dumbledore considered him, the tip of his long fingers together. Literally sitting at his desk like this. "I must ask you, Harry, whether there's anything you'd like to tell me," he said gently. "Anything at all?" Harry didn't know what to say. He thought of Malfoy shouting, "You'll be next, mudbloods!" and of the polyjuice potion simmering away in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. Then he thought of the disembodied voice he had heard twice and remembered what Ron had said. Hearing voices that no one else can hear isn't a good sign, even in the wizarding world. He thought, too, about what everyone was saying about him, and his growing dread that he was somehow connected with Salazar Slytherin. "No," said Harry. "There isn't anything, Professor." The double attack on Justin and nearly headless Nick turned what had hit Herdo. What the fuck is that? Hitherto. What the fuck is that? Let us turn to Google. Hitherto. Hitherto. Oh, hitherto. I said hither. Oh, okay. Until now or until the time of discussion. Okay. It's hither. You know I'm tripping. The double attack on Justin and nearly headless Nick turned what had hitherto been nervousness into real panic. Curiously, it was nearly headless Nick's fate that seemed to worry people the most. What could possibly do that to a ghost? People asked each other. What terrible power could harm someone who was already dead? There was almost a stampede to book seats on the Hogwarts Express so that students could go home for Christmas. At this rate, we'll be the only ones left, Ron told Harry and Hermione. Us, Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle. What a jolly holiday it's going to be. Crabbe and Goyle, who always did whatever Malfoy did, had signed up to stay over the holidays too. But Harry was glad that most people were leaving. He was tired of people skirting around him in the corridors as though he were about to sprout fangs and spit poison. Tired of all the muttering, pointing, and hissing as he passed. Fred and George, however, found all this very funny. They went out of their way to march ahead of Harry down the corridor, shouting, "Make way for the heir of Slytherin! Seriously, evil wizard coming through." Percy was deeply disapproving of this behavior. Percy, his brothers be on his nerve. They really do. And it's hilarious. "It is not a laughing matter," he said coldly. "Oh, get out of the way, Percy," said Fred. "Harry's in a hurry." "Yeah, he's out to the Chamber of Secrets for a cup of tea with his fanged servant," said George, chortling. Ginny didn't find it amusing either. "Oh, don't," she wailed every time Fred asked Harry loudly who he was planning to attack next, or when George pretended to ward Harry off with a large clove of garlic when they met. Harry didn't mind. It made him feel better that Fred and George, at least, thought the idea of his being Slytherin's heir was quite ludicrous. But their antics seemed so aggravating Draco Malfoy, who increasingly soured each time he saw them at it. "It's because he's bursting to say it's really him," said Ron knowingly. "You know he hates anyone beating him at anything, and you're getting all the credit for his dirty work." "Not for long," said Hermione in a satisfied tone. "The polyjuice potion's nearly ready. We'll be getting the truth out of him any day now." At last the term ended, and a deep silence as the snow on the grounds descended on the castle. Harry found it peaceful, rather than gloomy, and enjoyed the fact that he and the Weasleys had the run of the Gryffindor Tower, which meant they could play Exploding Snap loudly without bothering anyone, and practice dueling in private. Fred, George, and Ginny had chosen to stay at school rather than visit Bill in Egypt with Mr. and Mrs. Weasley. Percy, who disapproved I'm telling y'all, Percy, who disapproved of what he termed their childish behavior, didn't spend much time in the Gryffindor common room. He had already told them pompously that he was only staying over Christmas because it was his duty as a prefect to support the teachers during this troubled time. Christmas morning dawned, cold and white. Harry and Ron, the only ones left in their dormitory, were woken very early by Hermione, who burst in, fully dressed and carrying presents for them both. "Wake up!" she said loudly, pulling back the curtains in the window. "Hermione, you're not supposed to be in here," said Ron, shielding his eyes against the light. "Merry Christmas to you, too," said Hermione, throwing him his present. "I've been up for nearly an hour, adding more lace wings to the potion. It's ready." Harry sat up, suddenly wide awake. "Are you sure?" "Positive," said Hermione, shifting Scabbers the rat. Now, y'all know how much I hate Scabbers. We're not finna get into that right now. But y'all know how much I hate him. And the fact that Harry let him go in the movies. The nigga who gave up yo mama and daddy to Voldemort, literally getting them killed, making you an orphan, you let him go. Okay. We ain't gonna talk. "Positive," said Hermione, shifting Scabbers the rat so that he could sit down on the end of Ron's four-poster. "If we're going to do it, I say it should be tonight." At the moment, Hedwig swooped into the room, carrying a very small package in her beak. "Hello," said Harry happily as she landed on his bed. "Are you speaking to me again?" She nibbled his ear in an affectionate sort of way, which was a far better present than the one she had brought him, which turned out to be from the Dursleys. They had sent Harry a toothpick and a note telling him to find out whether he'd be able to stay at Hogwarts for summer vacation too. The Dursleys are terrible. That's not funny. The rest of Harry's Christmas presents were far more satisfactory. Hagrid had sent him a large tin of treacle toffee. Now y'all remember we had Googled treacle, and that's the only reason I know what that is, because we done seen them with the treacle tarts, but I ain't never seen treacle toffee. Hagrid had sent him a large tin of treacle toffee, which Harry decided to soften by the fire before eating. Damn, you ain't had no water yet this morning, just straight to the sugar? Ron had given him a book called Flying with the Cannons, a book of interesting facts about his favorite Quidditch team, and Hermione had bought him a luxury eagle feather quill. I really like the quill. Now that's a good gift, Hermione. Harry opened the last present to find a new hand-knitted sweater from Mrs. Weasley. Oh! Y'all know we love her. And a large plum cake. He read her card with a fresh surge of guilt, thinking about Mr. Weasley's car, which hadn't been seen since its crash with the Whomping Willow and the bout of rule breaking he and Ron were planning next. If I remember correctly, that car is still out there in the woods somewhere, and it's going to pop up again in one of these stories. I don't know at what point, but that car is coming back. No one, not even someone dreading taking Polyjuice Potion later, could fail to enjoy Christmas dinner at Hogwarts. The Great Hall looked magnificent. Not only were there a dozen frost-covered Christmas trees and thick streamers of holly and mistletoe crisscrossing the ceiling, but enchanted snow was falling, warm and dry from the ceiling. Dumbledore led them in a few of his favorite carols, Hagrid booming more and more loudly with every goblet of eggnog he consumed. Percy, who hadn't noticed that Fred had bewitched his prefect badge so that it now read Pinhead, kept asking them what all they were sniggering at. Harry didn't even care that Draco Malfoy was making loud, snide remarks about his new sweater from the Slytherin table. With a bit of luck, Malfoy will be getting his comeuppance. I've never seen this word before. Let us Google it. COMEUPPANCE. Comeuppance. Oh, that's how you spell comeuppance. A punishment or fate that someone deserves. Oh yeah, that's the perfect word. With a bit of luck, Malfoy will be getting his comeuppance in a few hours' time. Harry and Ron had barely finished their third helpings of Christmas pudding when Hermione ushered them out of the hall to finalize their plans for the evening. We still need a bit of people changing. Ew! I forgot they still got to get like some of the people. Yeah, ew. We still need a bit of the people you're changing into, said Hermione matter-of-factly, as though she were sending them to the supermarket for laundry detergent. And obviously, it'll be best if you can get something of Crabbe and Goyle's. They're Malfoy's best friends. He'll tell them anything. And we'll also need to make sure the real Crabbe and Goyle can't burst in on us while we're interrogating him. I've got it all worked out, she went on smoothly, ignoring Harry and Ron's stupid faces. She held up 2 plump chocolate cakes. I filled these with a simple sleeping draught. Oh, this girl is so fucking smart. I'm telling y'all, I don't know what we would do without Hermione. I really don't. All you have to do is make sure Crabbe and Goyle find them. You know how greedy they are. They're bound to eat them. Once they're asleep, pull out a few of their hairs and hide them in a broom closet. Harry and Ron looked incredulously at each other. Hermione, I don't think that could go seriously wrong. But Hermione had a steely glint in her eye, not unlike the one Professor McGonagall sometimes had. The potion will be useless without Crabbe and Goyle's hair, she said sternly. You do want to investigate Malfoy, don't you? Oh, all right, said Harry. But what about you? Whose hair are you ripping out? I mean, I would let her get Draco hair because I don't trust Harry and Ron to do it. I've already got mine, said Hermione brightly, pulling a tiny bottle out of her pocket and showing them the single hair inside. Remember Millicent Bulstrode wrestling with me at Dueling Club? She left this on my robes when she was trying to strangle me, and she's gone home for Christmas, so I'll just have to tell the Slytherins I've decided to come back. When Hermione had bustled off to check on the Polyjuice Potion again, Ron turned to Harry on a doom-laden expression. Have you ever heard of a plan where so many things could go wrong? But to Harry and Ron's utter amazement, stage 1 of the operation went just as smoothly as Hermione had said. They lurked in the deserted entrance hall after Christmas tea, waiting for Crabbe and Goyle, who had remained alone at the Slytherin table, shoveling down 4th helpings of trifle. Harry had perched the chocolate cakes on the end of the banisters. When they spotted Crabbe and Goyle coming out of the Great Hall, Harry and Ron hid quickly behind a suit of armor next to the front door. How thick can you get? Ron whispered ecstatically as Crab gleefully pointed out the cakes to Goyle and grabbed them. Grinning stupidly, they stuffed the cakes whole into their large mouths. For a moment, both of them chewed greedily, looking of triumph on their face. Then, without the smallest change of expression, they both they both keeled over backward onto the floor. By far the hardest part was hiding them in the closet across the hall. Once they were safely stowed among the buckets and mops, Harry yanked out a couple of bristles that covered Goyle's forehead. And Ron pulled out several of Crab's hairs. They also stole their shoes because their own were far too small for Crab and Goyle-sized feet. And then, nah, I don't know if I would have thought about that. Because, yeah, Crab and Goyle definitely bigger than Ron and Harry. That makes sense. They got to make everything match. They got to make it look good. Then, still stunned what they had just done, sprinted up to Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. They could hardly see for the thick black smoke issuing from the stall in which Hermione was stirring the cauldron. Pulling their robes over their faces, Harry and Ron knocked softly on the door. "Hermione?" They heard the scrape of the lock and Hermione emerged, shiny-faced and looking anxious. Behind her, they heard the gloop-gloop of the bubbling glutinous potion. 3 glass tumblers stood ready on the toilet seat. Ew. "Did you get them?" Hermione asked breathlessly. Harry showed her Goyle's hair. "Good. And now sneak those spare robes out of the laundry," Hermione said, holding up a small... "Oh, shit, yeah, because they got to have Slytherin robes." "You'll need bigger ones since you're Crab and Goyle." The 3 of them stared into the cauldron. Close up, the potion looked like thick, dark mud bubbling sluggishly. "I'm sure I've done everything right," said Hermione, nervously rereading the splotched page of most potent potions. "It looks like the book says once we drunk it, we'll have exactly an hour before we change back into ourselves." "Now what?" Ron whispered. "We separate it into 3 glasses and add the hairs." Hermione ladled large dollops of the potion into each of the glasses. Then, her hand trembling, she shook Millicent Bulstrode's hair out of its bottle into the first glass. The potion hissed loudly like a boiling kettle and frothed madly. A second later, it had turned a sort of yellow, a sick sort of yellow. "Ugh, essence of Millicent Bulstrode," said Ron, eyeing it with loathing. "Bet it tastes disgusting." "Add yours then," said Hermione. Harry dropped Goyle's hair in the middle glass and Ron put Crab's hair into the last one. Both glasses hissed and frothed. Goyle's turned the khaki color of a booger. Crab's a dark, murky brown. "Hang on," said Harry as Ron and Hermione reached for their glasses. "We better not drink all of them in here. Once we turn into Crab and Goyle, we won't fit. And Millicent Bulstrode's no pixie." "Good thinking," said Ron, unlocking the door. "We'll take separate stalls." Careful not to spill a drop of his polyjuice potion, Harry slipped into the middle stall. "Ready?" he called. "Ready," came Ron and Hermione's voices. 1, 2, 3. Pinching his nose, Harry drank the potion down in 2 large gulps. It tasted like overcooked cabbage. "Oh, see, that's not bad." Overcooked cabbage. Okay. Immediately, his insides were started writhing as though he just swallowed live snakes. Doubled up, he wondered whether he was going to be sick. Then a burning sensation spread rapidly from his stomach to the very ends of his fingers and toes. Next, bringing him gasping to all fours, came a horrible melting feeling as the skin all over his body bubbled like hot wax. And before his eyes, his hands began to grow. The fingers thickened, the nails broadened, the knuckles were bulging like bolts. His shoulders stretched painfully, and a prickling on his forehead told him his hair was creeping down towards his eyebrows. His robes ripped at his chest and expanded like a barrel bursting through its hoops. His feet were in agony, shoes 4 sizes too small. "God damn, Harry, they that much bigger than you? You wear a 6, they wear a 10? The fuck?" As suddenly as it had started, everything stopped. Harry lay face down on the stone-cold floor, listening to Myrtle gurgling. Myrtle, that poor baby, bless her heart. Listening to Myrtle gurgling morosely in the inn toilet. With difficulty, he kicked off his shoes and stood up. So this is what it felt like being Goyle, his large hand trembling. He pulled off his old robes, which were hanging a foot above his ankles, pulled on the spare ones, and laced up Goyle's boat-like shoes. He reached up to brush his hair out of his eyes and only met with a short growth of worry bristles low on his forehead. Then he realized that his glasses were clouding his eye because Goyle obviously didn't need them. He took them off and called, "Are you two okay?" Goyle's low rasp of a voice issued from his mouth. Oh my God, obviously he got Goyle's voice. I don't know why that just surprised me. "Yeah," came the deep grunt of Crabbe from his right. Harry unlocked his door and stepped in front of the cracked mirror. Goyle stared back at him. Ew, yuck! Goyle stared back at him out of dull, deep-set eyes. Harry scratched his ear. So did Goyle. Ron's door opened. They stared at each other, except that he looked pale and shocked. Ron was indistinguishable from Crabbe, from the pudding bowl haircut to the long gorilla arms. "This is unbelievable," said Ron, approaching the mirror and prodding Crabbe's flat nose. "Unbelievable. We better get going," said Harry, loosening the watch that he was cutting into Goyle's thick wrists. "We've still got to find out where the Slytherin common room is. I only hope we can find someone to follow." Ron, who had been gazing at Harry, said, "You don't know how bizarre it is to see Goyle thinking." He banged on Hermione's door. "Come on, we need to go." A high-pitched voice answered him. I don't think I'm going to come after all. You going without me?" "Hermione, we know Millicent Bulstrode's ugly. No one's going to know it's you." "No, really, I don't think I'll come. You two hurry up. You're wasting time." Harry looked at Ron, bewildered. "That looks more like Goyle," said Ron. "That's how he looks every time a teacher asks him a question." "Hermione, are you okay?" said Harry through the door. "Fine, I'm fine. Go on." Harry looked at his watch. 5 of their precious 60 minutes had already passed. "We'll meet you back here, all right?" he said. Harry and Ron opened the door of the bathroom carefully, checking that the coast was clear, and set off. "Don't swing your arms like that," Harry muttered to Ron. "Huh?" "Crabbe holds them sort of stiff." "How's this?" "Yeah, that's better." They went down the marble staircase. All they needed now was a Slytherin that they could follow into the Slytherin common room, but there was nobody around. "Any ideas?" muttered Harry. "The Slytherins always come up to breakfast from over there," said Ron, nodding at the entrance to the dungeons. The words had barely left his mouth when a girl with long curly hair had emerged from the entrance. "Excuse me," said Ron, hurrying up to her. "We've forgotten the way to our common room." "I beg your pardon?" said the girl stiffly. "Our common room? I'm a Ravenclaw." She walked away, looking suspiciously back at them. Harry and Ron hurried down the stone steps into the darkness, their footsteps echoing particularly loudly as Crabbe and Goyle's huge feet hit the floor, feeling that this wasn't going to be as easy as they had hoped. I was about to say, y'all ain't had no map of Hogwarts to know where the Slytherin common room is. Damn it. This is what y'all should have did before y'all drunk this shit. Y'all supposed to already know where y'all going. The labyrinth passages were deserted. They walked deeper and deeper under the school, constantly checking their watches to see how much time they had left. After a quarter of an hour, just when they were getting desperate, they heard a sudden movement ahead. "Ha!" said Ron excitedly. "That's one of them now." The figure was emerging from a side room. As they hurried nearer, however, their hearts sank. It wasn't a Slytherin. It was Percy. "What are you doing down here?" said Ron in surprise. Percy looked affronted. "That," he said stiffly, "is none of your business. It's Crabbe, isn't it?" "Oh, yeah," said Ron. "Yeah, Ron, you don't look like yourself talking to your damn brother like that. Don't get us caught." "Well, get off to your dormitories," said Percy sternly. Said Percy sternly. "It's not safe to go wandering around dark corridors these days." "You are," Ron pointed out. "I," said Percy, drawing himself up, "am a prefect. Nothing's about to attack me." A voice suddenly echoed behind Harry and Ron. Draco Malfoy was strolling toward them, and for the first time in his life, Harry was pleased to see him. "There you are," he drawled, looking at them. "Have you two been pigging out in the Great Hall all this time? I've been looking for you. I want to show you something really funny." Malfoy glanced witheringly at Percy. "And what are you doing down here, Weasley?" he sneered. Percy looked outraged. "You want to show a bit more respect to a school prefect," he said. "I don't like your attitude." Malfoy sneered and motioned for Harry and Ron to follow him. Harry almost said something apologetic to Percy, but caught himself just in time. He and Ron hurried after Malfoy, who said as they turned into the next passage, "That Peter Weasley. Percy, Ron corrected him automatically. Whatever, said Malfoy. I've noticed him sneaking around a lot lately, and I bet I know what he's up to. He thinks he's going to catch Slytherin's heir single-handed. He gave a short, derisive laugh. Harry and Ron exchanged excited looks. Malfoy paused by a stretch of bare, damp stone wall. What's the new password again? He said to Harry. Said Harry. Oh yeah, pure blood, said Malfoy, not listening, and a stone door concealed into a wall slid open. Malfoy marched through it, and Harry and Ron followed him. The Slytherin common room was a long, low, underground room with rough stone walls and ceiling from which round, greenish lamps were hanging on chains. A fire was crackling under an elaborately carved mantelpiece ahead of them, and Slytherins were silhouetted around in high-backed chairs. Wait here, said Malfoy to Harry and Ron, motioning them to a pair of empty chairs set back from the fire. I'll go and get it. My father's just sent it to me. Wondering what Malfoy was going to show them, Harry and Ron sat down, doing their best to look at home. Malfoy came back a minute later, holding what looked like a newspaper clipping. He thrust it under Ron's nose. That'll give you a laugh, he said. Harry saw Ron's eyes widen in shock. He read the clipping quickly, gave a very forced laugh, and handed it to Harry. It had been clipped out of the Daily Prophet, and it said, Inquiry at the Ministry of Magic. Arthur Weasley, head of the Misuse of Muggle Artifacts Office, was today fined 50 galleons for bewitching a Muggle car. Now, y'all know the Weasleys don't got that much money. So that's actually a lot for them to be fined. I don't even know how much 50 galleons is, but it sounded like a lot the way Ron's face looked. Mr. Lucius Malfoy, a governor of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, where the enchanted car crashed earlier this year, called today for Mr. Weasley's resignation. Weasley has brought the ministry into dispute, Mr. Malfoy told our reporter. He is clearly unfit to draw up our laws, and his ridiculous Muggle Protection Act should be scrapped immediately. Mr. Weasley was unavailable for comment, although his wife told reporters to clear off or she set the family ghoul on them. Y'all gonna quit doing the Weasleys like that. I don't appreciate that. Well, said Malfoy impatiently as Harry handed the clipping back to him. Don't you think it's funny? Ha ha, said Harry bleakly. Arthur Weasley loves Muggles so much he should snap his wand in half and go and join them, said Malfoy scornfully. You'd never know the Weasleys were purebloods the way they behave. Ron's, or rather, Crabbe's face was contorted with fury. What's up with you, Crabbe? Snapped Malfoy. Stomachache, Ron grunted. Well, go up to the hospital wing and give all those mudbloods a kick for me, said Malfoy, snickering. You know, I'm surprised the Daily Prophet hasn't reported all these attacks yet, he went on thoughtfully. I suppose Dumbledore is trying to hush it all up. He'll be sacked if it doesn't stop soon. Father's always said old Dumbledore is the worst things that ever happened to this place. He loves Muggleborns. A decent headmaster would have never let slime like the Creevy in. I mean, Draco just talking cash shit. This is all he do, just all day, is just bag on other people. Malfoy started taking pictures with an imaginary camera and did a cruel but accurate impression of Colin. Potter, can I have a picture, Potter? Can I have your autograph? Can I lick your shoes, please, Potter? He dropped his hands and looked at Harry and Ron. What's the matter with you two? Far too late. Harry and Ron forced themselves to laugh, but Malfoy seemed satisfied. Perhaps Crabbe and Goyle were always slow on the uptake. St. Potter and the Mudblood friend, said Malfoy slowly. He's another one with no proper wizard feeling, or he wouldn't go around with that jumped-up Granger Mudblood, and people think he's Slytherin's heir? Harry and Ron waited with bated breath. Malfoy was surely seconds away from telling them it was him. But then, I wish I knew who it is, said Malfoy putantly. I could help them. Ron's jaw dropped, so that Crabbe looked even more clueless than usual. Fortunately, Malfoy didn't notice, and Harry, thinking fast, said, You must have some idea who's behind it all. You know I haven't, Goyle. How many times do I have to tell you? Snapped Malfoy. And Father won't tell me anything about the last time the chamber was opened either. Of course, it was 50 years ago, so it was before his time. But he knows all about it, and he says that it was all kept quiet. And it'll look suspicious if I know too much about it. But I know one thing. The last time the Chamber of Secrets was opened, a mudblood died. So I bet it's a matter of time before one of them's killed this time. I hope it's Granger, he said with relish. This boy's sick. This boy is sick as fuck. He's sick as fuck. Ron was clenching Crab's gigantic fists, feeling that it would be a bit of a giveaway if Ron punched Malfoy. Harry shot him a warning look and said, "Do you know if the person who opened the chamber last time was caught?" "Oh yeah, whoever it was expelled," said Malfoy. "They're probably still in Azkaban." "Azkaban?" said Harry, puzzled. "Azkaban, the wizard prison, Goyle?" said Malfoy, looking at him in disbelief. "Honestly, if you were any slower, you'd be going backward." He shifted restlessly in his chair and said, "Father says to keep my head down and let the heir of Slytherin get on with it. He says the school needs riddling of all the mudblood filth, but not to get mixed up in it. Of course, he's got a lot on his plate at the moment. You know the Ministry of Magic raided our manor last week." Harry tried to force Goyle's dull face into a look of concern. "Yeah," said Malfoy. "Luckily, they didn't find much. Father's got some very valuable dark arts stuff. But luckily, we've got our own secret chamber under the drawing room floor." "Ho!" said Ron. Malfoy looked at him. So did Harry. Ron blushed. Even his hair was turning red. His nose was slowly lengthening. Their hour was up. Ron was turning back into himself, and from the look of horror he was suddenly giving Harry, he must be too. They both jumped to their feet. "Medicine for my stomach," Ron grunted, and without further ado, they sprinted the length of the Slytherin common room, hurled themselves at the stone wall, and dashed up the passage, hoping against the hope that Malfoy had noticed anything. Harry could feel his feet slipping around in Goyle's huge shoes and had to hoist up his robes as he shrank. They crashed up the steps and into the dark entrance hall, which was full of a muffled pounding coming from the closet where they'd locked Crabbe and Goyle. Leaving their shoes outside the closet door, they sprinted in their socks up the marble staircase toward Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. "Well, it wasn't a complete waste of time," Ron panted, closing the bathroom door behind him. "I know we still haven't found out who's doing the attacks, but I'm going to write to Dad tomorrow and tell him to check under the Malfoy's drawing room." Harry checked his face in the cracked mirror. He was back to normal. He put his glasses on, and Ron hammered on the door of Hermione's stall. "Hermione, come out! We've got loads to tell you!" "Go away!" Hermione squeaked. Harry and Ron looked at each other. "What's the matter?" said Ron. "You must be back to normal by now. We are." Bemoaning Myrtle glided suddenly through the stall door. Harry had never seen her looking so happy. "Oh, wait till you see," she said. "It's awful." They heard the lock slide back, and Hermione emerged, sobbing, her robes pulled up over her head. "What's up?" said Ron uncertainly. "Have you still got Millicent's nose or something?" Hermione let her robes fall, and Ron backed into the sink. Her face was covered in black fur. Fuck, the hair was from a fucking animal. Her eyes had turned yellow as there was a long pointed ears poking through her hair. "It was cat hair," she howled. Damn it, yeah. Millicent Bulstrode must have a cat. And the potion isn't supposed to be used for animal transformations. Fuck. "Uh-oh," said Ron. "You'll be teased something dreadful," said Myrtle happily. "Myrtle, go back into your stall. 'Cause, girl." "It's okay, Hermione," said Harry quickly. "We'll take you up to the hospital wing. Madame Pomfrey never asks too many questions." It took a long time to persuade Hermione to leave the bathroom. Moaning Myrtle sped them on their way with a hearty guffle. "Wait till everyone finds out you've got a tail." Y'all, god damn it. Hold on, y'all. That was the end of chapter 12. We definitely about to read chapter 13, but I need a hit of my coconut water. These kids always got something going on. Like, damn, did you not grab like a long hair? Like, don't Millicent got long hair? Cat hair don't be real long. Damn it, Hermione. And it's so funny. I didn't think the spell was going to go wrong But I did think to myself, how do you know that that's Millicent's hair just because it was left behind? Like, hair comes from anywhere. God damn it. Oh, let me show y'all the picture for chapter 13. Chapter 13, The Very Secret Diary. I don't know what this Cupid picture got to do with the trajectory of this episode. I'm talking about this episode. The trajectory of this chapter. Hermione remained in the hospital wing for several weeks. God damn it, who was bringing her schoolwork? Y'all know Hermione don't play about her schoolwork. There was a flurry of rumor about her disappearance when the rest of the school arrived back from their Christmas holidays. Oh yeah, fuck. Okay, it was Christmas holiday. Okay. So she got away with it for a little bit. Because of course, everyone thought she had been attacked. So many students filed past the hospital wing trying to catch a glimpse of her that Madame Pomfrey took out her curtains again and placed them around Hermione's bed to spare her the shame of being seen with a furry face. Harry and Ron went to visit her every evening. When the new term started, they brought her each day's homework. If I'd sprouted whiskers, I'd take a break from work, said Ron, tipping a sack of books onto Hermione's bedside table one evening. Don't be silly, Ron. I've got to keep up, said Hermione briskly. Her spirits were greatly improved by the fact that all the hair had gone from her face and her eyes were turning slowly back to brown. I don't suppose you've got any new leads, she added in a whisper, so that Madame Pomfrey couldn't hear. Nothing, said Harry gloomily. I was so sure it was Malfoy, said Ron, for about the 100th time. What's that? Asked Harry, pointing to something gold sticking out from under Hermione's pillow. Just a get well card, said Hermione hastily, trying to poke it out of sight. But Ron was too quick for her. He pulled it out, flicked it open, and read aloud. To Miss Granger, wishing you a speedy recovery from your concerned teacher, Professor Gilderoy Lockhart, Order of Merlin, 3rd class, honorary member of the Dark Force Defense League, and 5-time winner of the Witch Weekly's Most Charming Smile Award. Ron looked up at Hermione, disgusted. You sleep with this under your pillow? But Hermione was spared, answering by Madame Pomfrey sweeping over her evening dose of medicine. Is Lockhart the smartest bloke you've ever met, or what? Ron said to Harry as they left the infirmary and started up the stairs toward Gryffindor Tower. Snape had given them so much homework, Harry thought he was likely to be in the 6th year before he finished it. Ron was saying he just wished he had asked Hermione how many rat tails you were supposed to add to a hair-raising potion when angry outbursts from the floor above reached their ears. That's Filch. Oh, shit. They better not have did nothing to his cat. Harry muttered as they hurried up the stairs and paused, out of sight, listening hard. You don't think someone else has been attacked? said Ron tensely. They stood still, their heads inclined toward Filch's voice, which sounded quite hysterical. Even more work for me, mopping all night like I haven't got enough to do. No, this is the final straw. I'm going to Dumbledore. His footsteps proceeded along the out-of-sight corridor, and they heard a distant door slam. They poked their heads around the corner. Filch had clearly been manning his usual lookout post. They were once again on the spot where Mrs. Norris had been attacked. They saw at a glance what Filch had been shouting about. A great flood of water stretched over half the corridor, and it looked as though it was still seeping from under the door of Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. Now that Filch had stopped shouting, they could hear Myrtle's wails echoing out of the bathroom stalls. Now what's up with her? Said Ron. Let's go and see, said Harry, and holding their robes over their ankles as they stepped through the great wash of water to the door, bearing its out-of-order sign, ignored as always, and entered. Moaning Myrtle was crying, if possible, louder and harder than ever before. She seemed to be hiding down in her usual toilet. It was dark in the bathroom because the candles had been extinguished in the great wash of water that left both walls and floor soaking wet. What's up, Myrtle? Said Harry. Who's that? Glugged Myrtle miserably. Come to throw something else at me? Harry waded across to her stall and said, Why would I throw something at you? Don't ask me. Myrtle shouted, emerging with a wave of yet more water, which splashed onto the already sopping floor.
Here I am, minding my own business, and someone thinks it's funny to throw a book at me?
But it can't hurt you if someone throws something at you, said Harry reasonably. I mean, it'd just go right through you, wouldn't it? He had said the wrong thing. Myrtle puffed herself up and shrieked,
Let's all throw books at Myrtle because she can't feel it. 10 points if you can get it through her stomach. 50 points if it goes through her head. Well, ha, 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 what a lovely game, I don't think.
Who threw it at you anyway? Asked Harry.
I don't know. I was just sitting on the U-bend thinking about death, and it fell right through the top of my head,
said Myrtle, glaring at them.
It's over there. It got washed out.
Harry and Ron. I hope it ain't our most potent potions book. Harry and Ron looked under the sink where Myrtle was pointing. A small, thin book lay there. It had a shabby black cover, and it was as wet as everything else in the bathroom. Harry stepped forward to pick it up, but Ron suddenly flung out an arm to hold him back. What? Said Harry. Are you crazy? Said Ron. It could be dangerous. Dangerous? Said Harry, laughing. Come off it. How could it be dangerous? You'd be surprised, said Ron, who was looking apprehensively at the book. Some of the books in the ministry's confiscated, Dad has told me. There was one that burned your eyes out. Ooh, Jesus. And everyone who read Sonnets of a Sorcerer spoke in limericks for the rest of their lives. And some old witch in a bath had a book that you could never stop reading. You just had to wander around with your nose in it, trying to do everything one-handed. And, all right, I've got the point, said Harry. The little book lay on the floor, nondescript and soggy. Well, we won't find out unless we look at it, he said. And he ducked around Ron and picked it off the floor. Harry saw at once that it was a diary, and the faded year on the cover told him it was 50 years old. Damn. He opened it eagerly. On the first page, he could just make out the name. T.M. Riddle. Oh, shit. We done made it to this part of the story. This motherfucking riddle. Hold on. Let me sit up, y'all. We done made it to this part. Uh-oh. Y'all know what this was in the movies. In smudged ink. Hang on, said Ron, who had approached cautiously and was looking over Harry's shoulder. I know that name. T.M. Riddle got an award for special services to the school about 50 years ago. How on earth do you know that? Said Harry in amazement. Because Filch made me polish his shield about 50 times in detention, said Ron resentfully. That was the one I burped slugs all over. If you wiped slime off of a name for an hour, you'd remember it too. Harry peeled the wet pages apart. They were completely blank. There wasn't the faintest trace of writing on any of them. Not even Aunt Mabel's birthday or dentist 3:30. He never wrote in it, said Harry, disappointed. I wonder why someone wanted to flush it away, said Ron curiously. Harry turned to the back cover of the book and saw the printed name of a variety store on Vauxhall Road, London. He must have been Muggle-born, said Harry thoughtfully. To have bought a diary from Vauxhall Road? Well, it's not much use to you, said Ron. He dropped his voice. 50 points if you can get it through Myrtle's nose. Harry, however, pocketed it. Hermione left the hospital wing de-whiskered, tailless, and fur-free at the beginning of February. On her first evening back in Gryffindor Tower, Harry showed her T.M. Riddle's diary and told her the story of how they had found it. Ooh, it might have hidden powers, said Hermione enthusiastically, taking the diary and looking closely at it. If it has, it's hiding them very well, said Ron. Maybe it's shy. I don't know why you don't chuck it, Harry. I wish I knew why someone did try to chuck it, said Harry. I wouldn't mind knowing how Riddle got an award for special services to Hogwarts either. Could have been anything, said Ron. Maybe he got 30 OWLs. Yeah, what is an OWL? I don't know what that is. Or saved a teacher from a giant squid. Maybe he murdered Myrtle. That would have done everyone a favor. Well, Myrtle killed herself. We're not going to talk about that. But Harry could tell from the arrested look on Hermione's face that she was thinking what he was thinking. What? Said Ron, looking from one to the other. Well, the Chamber of Secrets was open 50 years ago, wasn't it? He said. That's what Malfoy said. Yeah, said Ron slowly. And this diary is 50 years old, said Hermione, tapping it excitedly. So? Oh, Ron, wake up, snapped Hermione. We know the person who opened the chamber last time was expelled 50 years ago. We know T.M. Riddle got an award for special services to the school 50 years ago. Well, what if Riddle got his special award for catching the heir of Slytherin? His diary will probably tell us everything, where the chamber is, and how to open it, and what sort of creatures live in it. The person who's behind his attacks this time wouldn't be lying around, would they? That's a brilliant theory, Hermione, said Ron, with just one tiny little flaw. There's nothing written in his diary. But Hermione was pulling her wand out of her bag. It might be invisible ink, she whispered. She tapped the diary 3 times and said, hold on, y'all, let me see if I can pronounce this spell. Aparicium? Aparicium. I don't fucking know. Nothing happened. Undaunted, Hermione shoved her hand back into her bag and pulled out what appeared to be a bright red eraser. It's a revealer. I got it in Diagon Alley, she said. She rubbed hard on January 1st. Nothing happened. I'm telling you, there's nothing to find in there, said Ron. Riddle just got a diary for Christmas and couldn't be bothered filling it in. Harry couldn't explain, even to himself. Why didn't he just throw Riddle's diary away? The fact that, even though he knew the diary was blank, he kept absent-mindedly picking it up, turning the pages, as though it were a story he wanted to finish. And while Harry was sure he had never heard the name T.M. Riddle before, it seemed to mean something to him. Almost as though Riddle was a friend and he'd had when he was very small and had half forgotten. Now, Tom M. Riddle is Voldemort when he was a child, right? Because if I remember correctly from the movies, Riddle was an orphan. And Dumbledore is the one that got him into Hogwarts. And then obviously Riddle ended up being terrible and he's Big V and all of that. But I just want to make sure I got this correct. Tom M. Riddle is child Voldemort. Yes? All right, yes. Nevertheless, Harry was determined to find out more about Riddle. So next day at break, he headed for the trophy room to examine Riddle's special award, accompanied by an interested Hermione and a thoroughly unconvinced Ron, who had told him he'd seen enough of the trophy room to last him a lifetime. Riddle's burnished gold shield was tucked away in a corner cabinet. It didn't carry details of why it had been given to him. Good thing, too, or it'd have been even bigger and I'd still be polishing it, said Ron. However, they did find Riddle's name on an old medal for magical merit and on a list of old head boys. What the fuck is a head boy? He sounds like Percy, said Ron, wrinkling his nose in disgust. Prefect head boy, probably top of every class. You say that like it's a bad thing, said Hermione in a slightly hurt voice. The sun had now begun to shine weakly on Hogwarts again. Inside the castle, the mood had grown more hopeful. There had been no more attacks since those on Justin and Nearly Headless Nick, and Madame Pomfrey was pleased to report that the mandrakes were becoming moody and secretive, meaning that they were fast leaving childhood. The moment their acne clears up, they'll be ready for repotting again. Harry heard her telling Filch kindly one afternoon. And after that, it won't be long until we're cutting them up and stewing them. You'll have Mrs. Norris back in no time. Oh my God, Mrs. Norris. I forgot she's still not dead, but dead, basically out cold. Perhaps the heir of Slytherin had lost his or her nerve, thought Harry. It must be getting riskier and riskier to open up the Chamber of Secrets, with the school so alert and suspicious. Perhaps the monster, whatever it was even now settling itself down to hibernate for another 50 years. Ernie Macmillan of Hufflepuff didn't take the cheerful view. He was still convinced that Harry was the guilty one, and that he had given himself away at the dueling club. Peeves wasn't helping matters. He kept popping up in the crowded corridor saying, "Oh, Potter, you rotter," now with a dance routine to match. Ain't Peeves the one that would always be asking Harry for pictures? Or is that, no, that's Colin Creevy that would ask Harry for pictures. Gilderoy Lockhart seemed to think that he himself had made the attack stop. Harry overheard him telling Professor McGonagall so, while the Gryffindors were lining up for transfiguration. I don't think there'll be any more trouble, Minerva. First of all, it's McGonagall to you. Not too much. Tapping his nose knowingly and winking. I think the chamber has been locked for good this time. The culprit must have known it was only a matter of time before I caught him. Rather sensible to stop now before I come down hard on him. You know what the school needs now is a morale booster. Wash away the memories of last term. I won't say any more just now, but I think I know just the thing. He tapped his nose again and strode off. Lockhart's idea of a morale booster became clear at breakfast time on February 14th. Come on, Valentine's Day, the day I'm recording this. Harry hadn't had much sleep because of a late running Quidditch practice the night before, and he hurried down to the Great Hall slightly late. He thought for a moment that he'd walked through the wrong doors. The walls were covered with large, lurid pink flowers. Worse still, heart-shaped confetti was falling from the pale blue ceiling. Harry went over to the Gryffindor table where Ron was sitting, looking sickened, and Hermione seemed to have been overcome with giggles. "What's going on?" Harry asked them, sitting down and wiping confetti off his bacon. Ron pointed to the teacher's table, apparently too disgusted to speak. Lockhart, wearing lurid pink robes to match his decorations, was waving for silence. The teachers on either side of him were looking stony-faced from where he sat. Harry could see a muscle going on Professor McGonagall's cheek. Snape looked as though someone had just fed him a large beaker of Skelligro. "Happy Valentine's Day," Lockhart shouted. "And I may thank the 46 people who have so far sent me cards. Yes, I have taken the liberty of arranging this little surprise for you all, and it doesn't end here." Lockhart clapped his hands, and through the doors to the entrance hall marched a dozen surly-looking dwarfs. Not just any dwarfs, however. Lockhart had all of them wearing golden wings and carrying harps. "My friendly card-carrying cupids," beamed Lockhart. "They will be roving around the school today, delivering your valentines. And the fun doesn't stop here. I'm sure my colleagues will want to enter into the spirit of the occasion. Why not ask Professor Snape to show you how to whip up a love potion? And while you're at it, Professor Flitwick knows more about entrancing enchantments than any wizard I've ever met. The sly old dog." Professor Flitwick buried his face in his hands. Snape was looking as though the first person to ask him for a love potion would be force-fed poison. "Please, Hermione, tell me you weren't one of the 46, said Ron as they left the Great Hall for their first lesson. Hermione suddenly became very interested in searching her bag for her schedule and didn't answer. All day long, the dwarfs kept barging into classes to deliver valentines. To the annoyance of the teachers, and late that afternoon, as the Gryffindors were walking up the stairs for charms, one of the dwarfs called up to Harry. "Oi, you! Harry Potter!" shouted a particularly grim-looking dwarf, elbowing people out of the way to get to Harry. Hot all over the thought of being given a valentine in front of a line of first years, which happened to include Ginny Weasley, Harry tried to escape. The dwarf, however, cut his way through the crowd by kicking people's shins and reached him before he'd gone 2 paces. "I've got a musical message to deliver to Harry Potter in person." What is this accent where he's saying Harry instead of Harry? That's funny. He said, twanging his harp in a threatening sort of way. "Not here," Harry hissed, trying to escape. "Stay still," grunted the dwarf, grabbing hold of Harry's bag and pulling him back. "Let me go," Harry snarled, tugging. With a loud ripping noise, his bag split into 2. His books, wand, parchment, and quill spilled onto the floor, and his ink bottle smashed over everything. "See, Harry, that's what you get. You so worried about being embarrassed. Fuck these kids. They don't even like you." Harry scrambled around, trying to pick it all up before the dwarf started singing, causing something of a holdup in the corridor. "What's going on here?" came the cold, drawling voice of Draco Malfoy. Harry started stuffing everything feverishly into his ripped bag, desperate to get away before Malfoy could hear his musical valentine. "What's all this commotion?" said another familiar voice as Percy Weasley arrived. Losing his head, Harry tried to make a run for it, but the dwarf seized him around the knees and brought him crashing onto the floor. "Right," he said, sitting on Harry's ankles. "Here's your singing valentine." I'm not finna read this, y'all. I'm not finna sing this, y'all. I'm finna read it. "His eyes are as green as a fresh pickled toad. His hair is as dark as a blackboard. I wish he was mine. He's really divine. The hero who conquered the Dark Lord." Ooh, come on, poem! Harry would be given all the gold in Gringotts to evaporate on the spot. He would give all the gold in Gringotts to evaporate on the spot. Trying valiantly to laugh along with everyone else, he got up, his feet numb from the weight of dwarf. as Percy Weasley did his best to disperse the crowd, some of whom who were crying with mirth. I've never seen that word either, mirth. M-I-R-T-H. Crying with mirth. I got to Google that. Let us check Mr. Google again. M-I-R-T-H.
Mirth.
So I said it right. Especially as expressed with laughter. Huh. I don't like that definition, but okay. Off you go. Off you go. The bell rang 5 minutes ago. Off to class now, he said, shooing some of the younger students away. And you, Malfoy. Harry, glancing over, saw Malfoy stood up and snatch up something. Leering, he showed it to Crabbe and Goyle, and Harry realized that he'd got Riddle's diary. Give that back, said Harry quietly. Wonder what Potter's written in this, said Malfoy, who obviously hadn't noticed the year on the cover and thought he had Harry's own diary. I mean, well, it ain't shit in there, so you can't embarrass Harry. A hush fell over the onlookers. Ginny was staring from the diary to Harry, looking terrified. Hand it over, Malfoy, said Percy sternly. Well, I've had a look. When I've had a look, said Malfoy, waving the diary tauntingly at Harry. Percy said, as a school prefect... Percy, baby. These kids don't give a fuck about you being a prefect. Just tell them, okay, what to do. They already know you're a prefect. You don't have to put that in front of every sentence. But Harry had lost his temper. He pulled out his wand and shouted, Expelliarmus! And just as Snape had disarmed Lockhart, so Malfoy found the diary shooting out of his hand and into the air. Ron, grinning broadly, caught it. Harry, said Percy loudly, no magic in the corridors. I'll have to report this, you know. But Harry didn't care. He one-upped on Malfoy, and that was worth 5 points from Gryffindor any day. Malfoy was looking furious, and as Ginny passed him to enter her classroom, he yelled spitefully at her. I don't think Potter liked your Valentine much. Ginny covered her face with her hands and ran into class. Snarling, Ron pulled out his wand too, but Harry pulled him away. Ron didn't need to spend the whole of Charms belching slugs. Okay, because that was disgusting. It wasn't until they had reached Professor Flitwick's class that Harry had noticed something rather odd about Riddle's diary. All his other books were drenched in scarlet ink. The diary, however, was as clean as it had been before the ink bottle had smashed all over it. He tried to point this out to Ron, but Ron was having trouble with his wand again. Oh yeah, because Ron had broke his wand. Large purple bubbles were blossoming out of the end, and he wasn't much interested in anything else. Poor Jenny, she done sent Harry that Valentine just for the vibes to be ruined. But my thing is like, I understand people get embarrassed about certain stuff. But why the fuck are you embarrassed about a Valentine? Oh my God, someone likes me. I'm so embarrassed. Like, why is that something to be embarrassed about? People be embarrassed. People be mad when don't nobody like them, but then they be mad when people like them. Pick a struggle. Pick a fucking struggle. Harry went to bed before anyone else in his dormitory that night. This was partly because he didn't think he could stand Fred and George singing, His eyes are green as a fresh pickled toad. They did not do this in the movie. I just realized that. One more time, and partly because he wanted to examine Riddle's diary again, and he knew that Ron thought he was wasting his time. Harry sat on his four-poster and flicked through the blank pages, not one of which had a trace of scarlet ink on it. Then he pulled out a new bottle of his bedside cabinet, dipped his quill into it, and dropped a blot on the first page of the diary. The ink shone brightly on the paper for a second, and then, as though it was being sucked into the page, vanished. Excited, Harry loaded up his quill a second time and wrote, My name is Harry Potter. The words shone momentarily on the page, and they too sank without a trace. Then at last something happened. Oozing back out of the page in his very own ink came words Harry had never written. Hello, Harry Potter. My name is Tom Riddle. How did you come by my diary? These words too faded away, but not before Harry started to scribble back. Someone tried to flush it down a toilet. He waited eagerly for Riddle's reply. Lucky that I recorded my memories in some more lasting way than ink, but I always knew that there would be those who would not want this diary read. What do you mean? Harry scrawled, blotting the page in his excitement. I mean that this diary holds memories of terrible things, things that were covered up, things that happened at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. That's where I am now, Harry wrote quickly. I'm at Hogwarts, and horrible stuff's been happening. Do you know anything about the Chamber of Secrets? His heart was hammering. Riddle's reply came quickly, but writing becoming untidier as though he was hurrying to tell all he knew. Of course I know about the Chamber of Secrets. In my day, they told us it was a legend, that it did not exist. But that was a lie. In my 5th year, the chamber was opened and the monster attacked several students, finally killing one. I caught the person who'd opened the chamber, and he was expelled. But the headmaster, Professor Dippet, ashamed that such a thing had happened at Hogwarts, forbade me to tell the truth. A story was given out that the girl had died in a freak accident. They gave me a nice, shiny, engraved trophy for my trouble and warned me to keep my mouth shut. But I knew it could happen again. The monster lived on, and the one who had the power to release it was not imprisoned. Harry nearly upset his ink bottle with his hurry to write back. It's happening again now. There have been 3 attacks and no one seems to know who's behind them. Who was it last time? I can show you, if you like, came Riddle's reply. You don't have to take my word for it. I can take you inside my memory of the night when I caught him. Harry hesitated, his quill suspended over the diary. What did Riddle mean? How could he be taken inside somebody else's memory? He glanced nervously at the door to the dormitory, which was growing dark. When he looked back at the diary, he saw fresh words forming. Let me show you. Harry paused for a fraction of a second and then wrote 2 letters. O.K. The pages of the diary began to blow, and though caught in a high wind, stopping halfway through the month of June. Mouth hanging open, Harry saw that the little square for June 13th seemed to have turned into a minuscule television screen. His hands trembling slightly, he raised the book to press his eye against the little window, and before he knew what was happening, he was tilting forward, the window was widening, he felt his body leave his bed, and he was pitched head first through the opening in the page into a whirl of color and shadow. Here we go with this shit, Harry. He felt his feet hit solid ground and stood, shaking as the blurred shapes around him came suddenly into focus. He knew immediately where he was. This circular room with the sleeping portraits was Dumbledore's office, but it wasn't Dumbledore who was sitting behind the desk. A wizened, frail-looking wizard, bald except for a few wisps of white hair. Did y'all hear my stomach? I'm hungry. Reading a letter by candlelight. Harry had never seen this man before. I'm sorry, he said shakily. I didn't mean to butt in. But the wizard didn't look up. He continued to read, frowning slightly. Harry drew nearer to his desk and stammered, just go, shall I? Still the wizard ignored him. He didn't seem to have even heard him. Thinking that the wizard might be deaf, Harry raised his voice. Sorry I disturbed you. I'll go now, he half shouted. The wizard folded up the letter with a sigh, stood up, walked past Harry without glancing at him, and went to draw the curtains at his window. The sky outside the window was ruby red, and it seemed to be sunset. The wizard went back to his desk, sat down, and twiddled his thumbs, watching the door. Harry looked around the office. No Fox the Phoenix, no whirring silver contraptions. This was Hogwarts, as Riddle had known it, meaning that this unknown wizard was headmaster, not Dumbledore. And he, Harry, was little more than a phantom, completely invisible to people of 50 years ago. There was a knock on the office door. Enter, said the old wizard in a feeble voice. A boy of about 16 entered, taking off his pointed hat. A silver prefect badge was glinting on his chest. He was much taller than Harry, but he too had jet black hair. Ah, Riddle, said the headmaster. You wanted to see me, Professor Dippet? Said Riddle. He looked nervous. Sit down, said Dippet. I've just been reading the letter you sent me. Oh, said Riddle. He sat down, gripping his hands together very tightly. My dear boy, said Dippet kindly, I cannot possibly let you stay at school over the summer. Surely you want to go home for the holidays? No, said Riddle at once. I'd much rather stay at Hogwarts than go back to that. You live in a muggle orphanage during the holidays, I believe. Yeah, so this gotta be Voldemort, y'all, said Dippet curiously. Yes, sir, said Riddle, reddening slightly. You are muggle born? Half blood, sir, said Riddle. Muggle father, witch mother. Are both your parents? My mother died just after I was born, sir. They told me at the orphanage she lived just long enough to name me. Tom, after my father. Marvolo, after my grandfather. Oh, T.M. Riddle. So it's Tarm, Marvolo, Riddle. Okay. Dippet clucked his tongue sympathetically. The thing is, Tom, he sighed, special arrangements might have been made for you, but in the current circumstances. You mean all these attacks, sir? Said Riddle, and Harry's heart leapt, and he moved closer, scared of missing anything. Precisely, said the headmaster. My dear boy, you must see how foolish it would be of me to allow you to remain at the castle when term ends, particularly in light of recent tragedy, the death of that poor little girl. You will be safer by far at your orphanage. As a matter of fact, the Ministry of Magic is even now talking about closing the school. We are no nearing locating the source of all this unpleasantness. Riddle's eyes had widened. Sir, if the person was caught, if it all stopped. What do you mean? Said Dippet, with a squeak in his voice, sitting up in his chair. Riddle, do you mean you know something about these attacks? No, sir, said Riddle quickly. But Harry was sure it was some sort of no that he himself had given Dumbledore. Dippet sank back, looking faintly disappointed. You may go, Tom. Riddle slid off his chair and slouched out of the room. Harry followed him. Down the moving spiral staircase they went, emerging next to the gargoyle in the darkening corridor. Riddle stopped, and so did Harry, watching him. Harry could tell that Riddle was doing some serious thinking. He was biting his lip, his forehead furrowed. Then, as though he had suddenly reached a decision, he hurried off, Harry gliding noiselessly behind him. They didn't see another person until they reached the entrance hall, when a tall wizard with long, sweeping auburn hair and a beard called to Riddle from the marble staircase. What are you doing wandering around this late, Tom? Harry gaped at the wizard. He was none other than the 50 years younger Dumbledore. I had to see the headmaster, sir, said Riddle. Well, hurry off to bed, said Dumbledore, could you imagine Harry seeing Dumbledore 50 years younger? I know Harry was like, giving Riddle exactly the kind of penetrating stare Harry knew so well. Best not to roam the corridors these days. Not since. He sighed heavily, bade Riddle good night, and strode off. Riddle watched him walk out of sight, and then, moving quickly, headed straight down the stone steps to the dungeons, which Harry in hot pursuit. But to Harry's disappointment, Riddle led him into a hidden passageway, or a secret tunnel, to the very dungeon in which Harry hid potions with Snape. The torches hadn't been lit, and when Riddle pushed the door almost closed, Harry could only just see him, standing stock still by the door, watching the passage outside. It felt to Harry that they were there for at least an hour. All he could see was the figure of Riddle at the door, staring through the crack, waiting like a statue. And then, just when Harry had stopped feeling expectant and tense, and started wishing he could return to the present, he heard something move beyond the door. Someone was creeping along the passage. He heard whoever it was pass the dungeon where he and Riddle were hidden. Riddle, quiet as a shadow, edged through the door and followed, Harry tiptoeing behind him, forgetting that he couldn't be heard. For perhaps 5 minutes they followed the footsteps, until Riddle suddenly stopped, his head inclined in the direction of new noises. Harry heard a door creak open, and then someone speaking in a hoarse whisper. Come on. Gotta get you out of here. Come on now. In the box. There was something familiar about that voice. Riddle suddenly jumped around the corner. Harry stepped out behind him. You could see the dark outline of a huge boy who was crouching in front of an open door, a very large box next to it. Evening, Rubius. Oh my God, Hagrid! Okay. Evening, Rubius, said Riddle sharply. The boy slammed the door shut and stood up. What are you doing down here, Tom? Riddle stepped closer. It's all over, he said. I'm going to have to turn you in, Rubius. They're talking about closing Hogwarts if the attacks don't stop. Oh, shit, I forgot. Hagrid. I know, obviously, Hagrid is not the villain, but I forgot that Hagrid somehow had something to do with this. I don't really remember. What do you... I don't think you meant to kill anyone, but monsters don't make good pets. I suppose you just let it out for exercise and... It never killed no one, said the large boy, backing against the closed door. From behind him, Harry could hear a funny rustling and clicking. Come on, Rubius, said Riddle, moving closer. The dead girl's parents will be here tomorrow. The least Hogwarts can do is make sure that the thing that killed their daughter is slaughtered. It wasn't him, roared the boy, his voice echoing in the dark passage. He wouldn't. He never. Stand aside, said Riddle, drawing out his wand. His spell lit the corridor with a sudden flaming light. The door behind the large boy flew open with such force it knocked him onto the wall opposite. And out of it came something that made Harry let out a long, piercing scream, unheard by anyone. A vast, low-slung, hairy body and a tangle. Oh my God, it's a goddamn spider. Hold on. Hold on, give me a second. I'm thinking this is a spider. This is disgusting. Hold on. I'm assuming this is Hagrid. I'm assuming this is, see, I can't even talk. I'm assuming this is a spider. Now, we know Hagrid is a lover of all of God's creatures, okay? But spiders, okay. I'm starting to itch, ill. A vast, low-slung, hairy body in a tangle of black legs, a gleam of many eyes, and a pair of razor-sharp pincers. Riddle raised his wand again, but he was too late. The thing bowled over him as it scuttled away, tearing up the corridor and out of sight. Riddle scrambled to his feet, looking after it. He raised his wand, but the huge boy leapt on him, seized his wand, and threw him back down, yelling, "No!" The scene whirled. The darkness became complete. Harry felt himself falling, and again with a crash, he landed spread eagle on his four-poster in the Gryffindor dormitory, Riddle's diary lying open on his stomach. Before he had time to regain his breath, the dormitory opened and Ron came in. "There you are," he said. Harry sat up. He was sweating and shaking. "What's up?" said Ron, looking at him with concern. "It was Hagrid, Ron. Hagrid opened the Chamber of Secrets 50 years ago." And there we go. Those were chapters, if I'm not, 12 and 13 of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Y'all, that was good. That was good. I almost don't even remember what happened in the second movie. I really don't. I might have to go rewatch my reaction. Also, those are here on YouTube in the full uncut on my website. Always linked below. And yeah, I will see y'all next week on the next episode of the book club.